Hi everyone. It's me, Marcy Lamberson, and today we are going to be making a tropical Santa. Now, Santa is wearing a swimsuit. I think he might be in Hawaii. I'm not sure. Kind of looks like it. And anyhow, let's turn this around and we can get started. Here we go. Let me hook this into my holder. And make sure we're covered everywhere we need to be. I've got these cords all over the place. They're kind of a you know what. Okay, and let me see whether I can make this just a little closer in. There we go. Okay, so I know where I can work. Okay, so let me show you first before I sit down who we're going to make. Here's our little Santa fella wearing sunglasses, a swimsuit. You can see him. Kind of a cute little fella. Anyhow, this is what we're going to be doing. Something similar at least. I have my torch ready to go. It is a minor torch, which I've had for over 20 years. I have other torches too, but I really enjoy using this one. And we're going to be using just a little bit of glass. Let's cover that fast. This is medium red effigy, dark ivory effigy, any ivory works, a little black stringer, and this is encased white, and it is encased with transparent clear. A little gather of white, cover it, thinly encase it with clear, pull it out into stringer, and then just in case I'm feeling ultra creative, I have a little piece of bright green. If I decide that I want to make his swimsuit a little bit more festive looking. So right now it's 90 degrees where I live, so Santa Christmas in July is just perfect. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to take my 3/32 mandrel, which is dipped in Dip and Go Blue Sludge, which is my favorite bead release to use for sculptural work, and I'm going to make essentially a barrel bead down at the lower section of my mandrel. When I look at my mandrel as I'm building my bead, the top of the head goes up here and the feet go down here, so that's the way that I work, and I'm pretty sure you can tell that I'm a lefty. Shouldn't make any difference. You should be able to do this just as easily. So a little fat barrel is our first step. And that little fat barrel's going to turn into his body, no head yet, and then we'll add on from there. I'm leaving a little extra room at the base for adding feet later on. So I've made a base bead and I'm just going to build up from there. It takes a minute. You see that I'm working. My rod is going through the flame, and then I am turning away from me, and my rod is perpendicular to my mandrel. And when it's perpendicular, the glass goes on a little more smoothly and more straight for the hole that you're going to have on it. So it just makes life a little bit easier when you hold it from that direction. We're going to go just a tiny bit bigger. I think that's approximately 5 small wraps, somewhere around there. Sometimes I measure to see where I am. Today we're not measuring. We're going rogue and we're just going to have fun. Okay, so I've got a base there and I'm going to add on to it, but first I'm going to marver it. And I have my Cote marver that I use. First I'm going to heat up my glass, and getting a little bit of an air bubble out of there. That was a big air bubble, and I just heated it. And we're going to heat the rest of it, and then we're going to give it a little marver and see where we are. I see that I've got more air bubbles in this area. Let's get those out before we get too far. So I'm letting the flame heat it up and bring the air to the top. Now sometimes you can diminish the air bubbles if you tend to get them by heating up the mandrel a little bit more. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's worth a try, isn't it? Okay, let's add more glass now. I think we got most of the air out of there. We're going to make this a tiny bit wider on the bottom. And then we're going to start making it a little bit wider right about in the center. That's where we want it. That's going to be his waistline. I think I see a little more air right here. Let's get that out of there. Let's keep going. We are going to turn it into a barrel. It just doesn't look like it right now. I promise you. Okay, now maybe all of the extra air is out of there. I'm hoping. Hey, we're still going to make it into a modified barrel. So don't forget, we're going to be pressing this a little bit, just very lightly, and that will take some of the girth out of it. So I tend to make it just a tiny bit larger than I think I need. Maybe you could call this shape a cocoon also, or I don't know, what shape would you call it? A modified bicone. There goes my torch mounted marver. Right before we started, it was giving me fits, and I just kind of wiggled it really hard, and it kind of broke away from where it was supposed to be. That's the way it goes. Okay, so I'm not worrying about this top end because I'm going to be adding the head onto it next. I guess it's more of a bicone, a fat barrel, whatever you want to call it. It's not strongly shaped like either, but you know the shape. Let's add a head shape, a round head. And I'm going to start it down a little ways on the top of this bead. That way you have a nice glass to glass connection, which makes sure that it doesn't pop off. I don't know whether you've ever tried connecting a piece of glass to another piece of glass, and you put it just next to it on the mandrel, and then after you got it off the mandrel, after it had been annealed, then it pops apart. I did one time a lot of years ago, and I thought, I am not going to do that anymore. So that's why I always create a little neck, a little piece to attach the glass to. Hot glass to a hot glass makes a really smooth connection. So you see, kind of looks a little bit like a body. We're going to add a little more because I like kind of big heads. I like a lot of other things too. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's essentially the shape that we want, and then we're going to heat one side and we're going to gently press just one side at a time. And I heated it to a glow, and don't forget that this ivory heats really easily, and we just pushed it like that. Now if I want more definition, I can just take a tool and push in a tiny bit more on each side. So you see the head and essentially the body. Same thing back here. We're going to just indent a tiny bit. There you go. Okay. We have essentially the Santa body. It's a dad bod. It's flatter in the front, but you'll see why we do that in a minute. Because what we're going to do next is add the red swimsuit. So we look at it and we go, okay, this is the head, this is the chest here, this will be the swimsuit area, and then he needs a little bit of leg showing down below. So you heat up your glass rod and you keep your base bead warm, and you're going to make a wrap or two around it depending. I like to have a marver nearby so I can press it in. And I like to have this flat side because this is going to be the front, so I know exactly where I'm going. So I'm going to go right across here. And because this glass is raised, I'm going to do one wrap, press it in, and then see whether I need to add a little bit more or whether I've got it. And already I see that it's thinner back there. I want to add just a tiny bit more so it's equal to the front. There we go. So while that's cooling a tiny bit, I'm going to heat the rest of the bead. And you know, anywhere that you aren't working is the place that you need to go first. So I'm heating from below the flame, the red, and I'm just going to gently press it, not all the way in yet. Okay, that's good. It leaves a little bit of feet, leaves a little bit of belly room. I think this will work for his trunks. And we're going to be outlining them also with some of the white. So that's going to make them a little larger also. We'll heat this next. And I'm just slowly going down, heating it bit by bit. And I'm pressing it in, but not 100% yet. I want to be sure I have covered what I want to cover, and it's easier to move glass around if it's not pressed all the way in, especially with that ivory as soft as it is. Okay, so I'm looking at the red, going, okay, we're close. That will make good trunks in the back. That'll make good trunks in the front. You see this dips down a little bit. I just push it up a tiny bit with my marver. This I might want down a little bit, so I just heat it up and push it down. Don't forget, your brass tools or metal tools can move the glass pretty well for you. So while that's cooling, I am just heating up the ends to make sure that they're still nice and warm. So what I'm going to do next is outline this piece with the white, the clear encased white. First I'm going to take off, there's a little nub on the end there. I'm going to get rid of that while I'm keeping my bead warm. And I just heated up the end that has a ball, and I'm wiping it off the end of my mandrel. My mandrel was slightly warmed up also. So now I'm going to make a wrap around the top and a wrap around the bottom. And I'm going to start on the side because if I need to hide a connection, it's easier on a side than right in front where everybody can see it. So I started, and I'm just covering the red with the encased white. Stop where it came, see right where it went. And let's heat the top of the head while that's cooling a tiny bit. And we're going to do it again on the bottom. And I'm just following the edge of the red around. If it's not perfect, don't worry. Okay, so now we have kind of like a border around it. And the funny thing that we're going to do is we're going to take something sharp, and it could be a pointed tool, it could be a razor blade. Oh, this is really uneven. Let's keep this warm while I'm staring at things. And what I'm going to do is find the front again, which of course is this side, the flat side, and I'm going to warm up the front a little bit, especially at the bottom, and I'm going to take my razor blade and I'm just going to gently push this up right in the middle. See how it makes it so he has two pant legs? Just that indentation there. We're going to do the same on the back. So find the back, the center of it, heat up your glass that you're going to move, which is the white going into the red, and I let it cool just a sec, and then I gently pushed up. Also gives him some cheeks too, if you know what I mean. Okay, so this is pretty much, we can push things around, we can make it the way we want, we can add any details that we want. And what I didn't do that I thought would be really cute, and I forgot until just this moment, I had thought also that this would be a cute swimsuit with like a red and white twisty, a candy stripe type situation. So consider that also. Or you could do little polka dots or little green leaves on it. However you want to decorate his swim trunks is fine with me. Let's add just a few little leaves. That's what I'm doing. We'll add a few little flowers or dots or something. You don't need to get too specific on this. You just want a little extra color, right? You could write ho 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 if you have good stringer abilities too. So I've got the green and I want to press it in, green little leaf areas. And I think with all the red, I left lots of red so people would see the red right away. I'm going to heat up the rest of them real fast. And how about, now that I have some little leaves, I'll do just some little white berries. Maybe that's mistletoe. Maybe Santa's naughtier than I thought. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, please, if you're seeing this through YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, okay? I'd love to have you. And if you click on that little bell looking thing where you subscribe, that means that it will show you whenever I add new videos. And I add them pretty often. Would love to have you see them, if that's what you'd like. I'm doing just 3 little dots on each of the green leaf areas. I'm trying to keep the white dots on the leaf areas, mostly because I want lots of the red to show, to remind everybody that it's holiday stuff. So I use the white for the dots. It's encased, which will help keep it a little bit more separated, and I'm letting them cool just a bit, and then I'm going to go under the flame and just gently tap them. Press them in just a tiny bit so they aren't sticking out too much. A little dot of red in between them would be cute too. We'll leave it just like that, otherwise we'll be doing this for a long time. I don't want to do that. Okay, so we still know what the front area is, and I think maybe what we want to do is add a wrap where his red hat is going to be, and then we can start making a face. So let's add this wrap with the red. I chose Effetray medium red. It's kind of a darker red, but I think any red that you like and use will be fine. So before I add the wrap, what I'm going to do is add a little red onto the mandrel. And that's about how high up I want to go with his hat eventually. But that way, when I add the red in advance, the face, I kind of need to know approximately where it's going to end. And this hat too will have a white border on it. So I'm also thinking about that. It looks like maybe I might want to go up just a tiny bit higher. So I'm adding about the equivalent of 2 more wraps to it. Give them a little bit more. Okay, and I leave it raised. I try not to melt it all the way in. You can always add a little bit more if you want, or not. I'm going to add a little bit more to his face because Santa can't have a totally flat face. I'm going to add some cheeks. And they're going to get covered with his beard, but to me, it's just kind of nice to have a little more shape in his face. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to pull out a little bit of this ivory for later on for when I'm ready to add a nose. So I just heated it up and I'm letting it cool slightly, and I'm pulling it off of my mandrel just a little bit. I wanted it a little thinner because I'm going to be adding sunglasses in there, and I'm going to need to hit a smaller area than usual. So this is the size that it ended up being. About commercial size, somewhere close to that. Okay, so I'm melting in the cheeks part way. They're still sticking out, but not quite as much. I'm making sure everything else stays warm as we're working on the face. The lower section will get cold easily. We might need to add a little bit more leg later on, but we have a general idea. So the next thing, how about if we add some sunglasses before we add the beard? This is pretty easy. What we're going to do is we're going to make a line that starts on one side and it's going to go all the way across to the other side where the sunglass part, not the lenses, but the bows, I think they're called, will go. And then we're going to do the dots over that line so that you'll have everything. You won't have to add little extra dots for connecting and stuff. Just makes it easier. So I would not have anything wider than this. If anything, if you could work a little smaller than this, it would probably be easier. I'm going to make my line. I'm heating up just a tiny bit of the black, And I know I want to start back here, and I can always add hair that covers some of it. And I'm just going across. Okay, so now that's the basic part where the sunglasses are going to go. And this end sticks out a little bit, so I'm just going to press it in a touch. That one's already in. I'm going to heat the bottom, make sure everything stays warm. And now let's add some dots for the lens part. And we're just going to go where eyeballs go and add some dots for his eyes. I don't want to make them super close together because I want to fit a nose somewhere in that vicinity also. So I left them as dots while I heat the areas that might have gotten cool while we were doing that. And then we're going to press them in. And it sure looks weird with cheeks and eyeballs on top of it. But don't you worry, it's going to look just right when we're done with it. I'm heating up the dots and gently pressing them. That's all there is to it. I usually heat the dot that's farther away from my dominant hand. That way, if I need a little bit better fine motor skills, it'll be easier on the one closer to me. And I'm just making sure that they're pretty close in size, so he's got his sunglasses on now. And don't worry about edges, we're going to add hair there and beard and stuff. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is heat them up because you know how important that is. And then this is going to be kind of like if any of you have made a gnome from here, we're going to add some of his beard. But before we add a beard, let's add the nose a little bit early. And I just want a dot kind of close to where the eyes are. You can always add to it later on, but at least you have the area reserved. And I hold it straight up so that the glass melts into the glass that's below it. If it was sinking too much in, I would have turned my bead upside down and then the glass, because of gravity, would have extended out the other way. But I didn't want him to have a Pinocchio nose. I just wanted that to go in. And then what I want to do also is add in at least the starts of his arms, if not the whole arms, because his beard might be covering some of it. So I'm going to have one arm somewhat raised on this side, and I'm doing it on this side because this is my dominant hand and that will be easier. The other side is going to have his arm laying down. If you're right-handed, you'll probably do it on the opposite side. So first things first, the harder arm that's farther away from me, I'm just heating up some glass, heating up the bead where it's going to go, which is right about shoulder level, and I'm touching down and just gently pulling it down part way. I don't need to worry about this being perfect at this point. I just want to get something in that if his beard is going to cover something, part of the shoulder, I need that already in place. So let's heat him up gently in other areas. Got one arm down, and let's get the other arm in there. And I want the other arm raised a little bit. So, and this is my easier side. I heat the side. I heat my glass. It's nice and red. And I'm taking my glass and putting it straight down, pushing in, and pulling out just a tiny bit. And then I'm holding it and letting it cool. So here's the thing, if it isn't exactly where you want it, you give him a bigger beard that covers your connection. If it's not quite long enough, that's okay, because you can add to it later on. You just want to get the basic in so you know where you can put hair. So we have it right in the middle, and we haven't done anything with the hand yet. We're just kind of getting it in there so that you'll be able to add your hair. Okay, so let's make him more into a Santa. I'm taking my encased white stringer and I'm going below and adding the first bit of his beard, and we're going to go around and add a lot of white because I like big old beards on Santa. And if your stringer's really thin, what I sometimes do is just melt kind of a bit of a gather on the rod itself and then add it if I want it to look a little thicker. Now, every so often I'm going to go back and heat my bead to keep him nice and warm everywhere. Right now I'm focusing on glass right around the face, so I need to be sure that the other areas get plenty of heat also and stay nice and warm. I'm going on each side, and I'm going to go around back also. So there's one side, and I'm just going right up the side. And it's almost like adding dots this time, isn't it? And I'm heating the other parts of him that need to get heated. See, this is going to turn into beard too. And let's get the back of his head also. I want him to have a little bit of hair back there. Now, we aren't going to mention that Santa uses Rogaine. He might, I don't know for sure. And if it goes over a little bit of the red on your hat, that's okay, because you're going to be adding some trim on the end of that hat edge to make sure that all of those edges are covered. So now he's getting some hair, and I want the hair to continue over towards the beard. So that's just my personal style. And we're going to connect everything. Okay, so far so good. Let's keep everything warm. He's got a big old beard, and you can add to it and get crazy with it. You could do whatever you want with it. I'm going to take some of this white and I'm going to do the trim around the hat. So I'm going to start on the side, and I heated it up, and I'm just going to go around the edge of the red. You know how these Santa hats go. They usually have a little white trim around it. There you go. Okay, so now we have him in his jams. We've got a beard, and you can get fancy with the beard. It can be longer, it can be thicker, you can add more. If I were adding more length, I might start a little bit lower. Just add a little bit more like that. You can give him a little tattoo. You can change his hair in the back. You can do whatever you want with it. Kind of looks like he's holding onto his pants and waving at the same time. Maybe we better do something with this arm. So his arm kind of went like it's going down a little bit. Let's make it come up a little bit more. So I softened it, and I'm just holding it up and pulling it forward a tiny bit. And I'm letting it cool right there. Now, I may not be able to disconnect easily. Oh, I was able to. That was lucky. If not, I would have flame cut above it. We're going to add more hat. Remind me. Okay, so his hand's up now. Let's give him a little wave. We're going to add a little more glass onto it and make his hand a little bit bigger. How about a thumbs up? That would be good. So we're just going to add a little bit of stringer for a thumb. We don't need to get fancier than that if we don't want. Give him a little bit bigger hand. I'm going to show you why in a minute. And then we're going to pull the ivory into a little bit of a stringer so that we can easily add a thumb. We're going to hang on because it's cooling. Once it cools, I'm going to flame cut it. And before I do anything else, I'm going to warm him up. Okay, so we ready for a thumbs up? We're just going to add a little dot. That's all we need to do. And pull it just a tiny bit. Okay, see, he's got a thumbs up. And if you're going to get fancy, because some of you like to get fancy, I'm barely heating his hand part. And I'm just going to take my razor and make tiny little indents so it looks like it's his fingers are pulled over. See how we do that? Here, let's add a couple little fingers. And it's just tiny little indents that indicate that it's a hand. Okay, so how about if we add onto his hat just a tiny bit? And you know, when you use red, especially this kind of red, you never know whether it's going to end up being multicolored from the heating and cooling stuff. Sometimes looks a little darker and a little lighter. If it looks like yours is going to turn out that way, there are a couple things you can do, but one of them is maybe add some flowers across it so it's not going to matter, right? Or do something that might disguise it, or you can add another full wrap of red before you add the addition to it. You've got options. I'm going to take some red and plop it right down at the top, just like a big dot right there on the very tip. And I'm letting it cool, thinking about gravity. I want the tip of the hat to head in the direction down where it is. So during that time, I'm going to keep the rest of him warm. And see how we added a little more hat to him. And I'm heating up that area and just pulling it up a little bit with my cool rod. Not that the rod is, it's literally cool, not like it's fancy cool type. I'm going to add a little pom-pom on the end. I'm keeping the bead warm. That was just a dot of white. And it looks like I need just a little bit down here, and then we're almost done. So what I want to do is heat up my ivory, and we're going to add a little bit down on the bottom for feet. If this is already wide, you could add 2 dots and make your feet that way. I want to be sure that I'm heating up the ivory where I am attaching this new ivory to. I want it to be nice and warm because that way you get a better connection. And see the angle that I'm holding my mandrel on? Did you see that? So that way the glass flowed downhill and added on in a much easier way. In between everything that I do, I'm going to keep him warm. Let's add just a little bit more. See the angle that I'm using? And I'm adding the glass like almost like a rim around that area. So now he's got a little bit longer legs too. He still has his thumbs up. He still has a hat with a pom-pom. We can take something sharp and give him some legs. Just an indent and an indent. And you know, a lot of this you can skip. If you're saying, hey, I'm tired, I don't want to do more, this is a good spot here. But I'm just going to add some dots for his feet. You guys know how to do dots, just off of the very edge. And another dot. I'm looking at the color of the ivory because we all know that that gets a little bit sloppy sometimes. And I'm holding it downwards, like straight down, and then that way it's not going to come around and hit the mandrel or move back. And then I just take a tool underneath and we give them some feet. Let's add a couple of toes and then we're good to go. Almost ready. So you can simplify this. You don't need to have one arm out. You can put both arms down and it would be a lot faster and a little bit easier if you're not ready to be quite that adventurous. You can skip the feet. I kind of think it's funny, but it's not that important. You want a face and some sunglasses and a beard and maybe a swimsuit if you can. And we are good to go. So, thank you for joining me today and making a tropical Santa. Let's turn them around so you can see all of them. And I'm Marcy Lamberson. Don't forget to subscribe and catch some of my classes too. Take care. Bye.